Hi, everyone, and welcome back to VAR on Air, a biweekly live stream program hosted by the Vietnamese American Roundtable that aims to cover reliable information important to and in service of our communities in San Jose and Santa Clara County. You can find us here every other Wednesday and sometimes every Wednesday on Facebook Live and every other Sunday on 1430 AM KBVN radio station. My name is Philip Nguyen. I'm the Executive Director for the Vietnamese American Roundtable. I'll be the host of the show today, which will be in English. And today's topic of conversation is going to be civic participation. And we have a couple of guests that will be joining us to be able to speak to what civic participation looks like, particularly within the Vietnamese community in Santa Clara County. But before we get to that, I wanted to share some COVID-19 updates and resources with you all. To know that, we have some resources here from Santa Clara County. If you test positive for COVID-19 or have been exposed to COVID-19, there are ways to help you and your family stay safe. You might be eligible for hotel placements, grocery, household, and baby supplies delivery, or financial or rental assistance if you qualify in Santa Clara County, right? And there's a phone number here, and we have all of these resources that we send out weekly in our weekly emailing list and promote on our Instagram at VR Roundtable and here on Facebook for those of you who might be interested. And all of these resources are going to be available in both English and Vietnamese, so that if your parents aren't the ones that are watching this with you right now, you can be the ones that share it with them. Some other updates that we have for this week is, we want to remind you all, if you do have children, to check your child's mask fit. Make sure that the mask goes over the nose and under the chin, that it fits snugly, and that you pinch down on the nose piece so you don't fog up your glasses like I would. And some of the mask don'ts is you don't need to wear a mask underneath an N95. Don't use the ones with an exhalation valve, and it's probably better not to use the ones that are a neck gaiter, a shirt, a bandana, or a scarf. There are also going to be some events that are coming up across the county where you can get vaccinated at night. One of them is tomorrow night from 5 to 9 p.m. For Mexican Independence Day, there's going to be a night clinic. Another one that you can attend that we have some information to is going to be at one of the local churches, and we'll share that with you all. So in addition to that, I just want to quickly remind everyone before we get into the conversation that fighting COVID-19 is a community-wide effort, right? It really begins with us understanding our individual responsibilities to make sure that we're vaccinated, to make sure that the ones in our families and our local communities are vaccinated. And as of yesterday, 82.6% of residents in Santa Clara County age 12 and older are fully vaccinated, right? And so we don't want to settle for just 82%. We don't want just a B. We want to make sure that we get 100% and that we keep that A, right? And so for more information about the COVID-19 vaccination efforts, to get testing, to look for vaccination sites, you can visit vax.sscgov.org, and we'll also leave that in the chat. So with these COVID-19 updates, and we'll have a couple more resources to provide you all at the end of our program. But again, today's program, I'm really, really excited to welcome some of my dear friends and the guests for tonight to talk a little bit about being engaged and participatory in the Vietnamese community. First, I'd like to bring up Anthony Lay, who's joining us today, who's one of VAR's board members. Welcome, Anthony. If you can unmute yourself and tell the people what you're about and who you are and where you're at, too. Beautiful background.
Yeah, so by the way, if anyone has a last name Lay, you can use this. My other name is Anthony Lay, spells L-E, but pronounced Lay, as in legendary, as in legitimate, your best friend, and let's go. So that's for free. You can use that, anyone who wants to use that. And something about myself, I am a leadership coach. So I help Asian Americans step into the leadership space, show up authentically, right? So the whole dealing with the model minority myth, the imposter syndrome, that's what I do. I'm also the board member, one of the board members of VAR. And so I get to use some of that and volunteer my time to uplift my people, in this case, my Vietnamese community. And I think you can see, I am actually at San Pedro Square Market. And it's a nice day to do some broadcasting on the side. So that's why I'm here.
Great. Thanks, Anthony. And thanks for, giving us that intro. As we talk about, a lot of what we talk about here at the Vietnamese American Roundtable is how we build power, right? And how we are able to see ourselves as the leaders that we're looking for in the community, right? And so glad that you do that work and that you're able to share a lot of that insight with us here on VAR and Air and just through the programs that we put on. The other person who's going to be our guest for tonight is one of our newer board members, Isabella Leung. Welcome, Isabella, to VAR on Air for the first time as one of VAR's board of directors, one of the newest VAR's board of directors members. Would you mind introducing yourself, telling us a little bit about what you're about and how you're involved?
Sure thing. Thanks for the introduction, Philip. And I wish I was sitting where Anthony's at, enjoying the nice, beautiful outdoors, but instead I'm stuck inside. Got to do some work later for the community as usual. But yeah, hi everyone. My name is Isabella Leung. Currently, I work with ICANN, which is another Vietnamese American CBO serving residents of Santa Clara County. I first got started with today's topic, civic participation, ever since I was in high school. I was like, there's not really a lot of young people, like taking on issues that are like affecting the community. And I feel like, this is something I care about, and I want to make sure that my voice is heard, that I'm using my voice for the community to uplift like whatever issues and needs that we have, right? So I'm really glad to now be able to like have a seat on VAR's board of directors and be able to continue using my efforts towards the issues that VAR is greatly involved with, which is community building, civic engagement, and cultural learning.
Great. Thank you so much, Isabella and Anthony. Welcome. So for this part of VAR on Air, we're looking to just have a thoughtful conversation. This VAR on Air, particularly, we're following up from an AAPI, or Asian American and Pacific Islander Silicon Valley Leadership Summit that organizations like APALI, CLUSA, ALA, ACI, and Lead Filipino hosted and that we were a part of. And as a part of the Silicon Valley Leadership Summit, we talked a little bit about the issues that are particularly resonant to us in the Bay Area, right, and in Silicon Valley, such as the way in which we understand public safety and police reform, the work that we did in 2020 to around the census and what that work looks like in 2021 when we're thinking about redistricting, right? And just generally how we make sure that our voices are heard in these processes. So, maybe I'll start with Anthony, if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about, in your experience as a leadership coach, right? Like, how is it that you teach civic participation? Like, what does it mean to be participating civically?
Yeah, so thank you so much, Philip. It's interesting because I think a lot of times we're taught to think like leadership development is in the business world, or you talk about like church leadership, but civic leadership doesn't get a lot of traction, what I've seen growing up. But at the core of what I think leadership is, it's really about taking care of people and leading people and mobilizing toward change. And that's the key piece. The work that needs to happen, right? Whether it's creating vision, communicating that vision, navigating people, helping people like work through the stress and the fear, helping people to build the skills of discernment to know what's misinformation, what's not. That is actually the core of what I will do, because whether it's in an organization or a community or in a chaotic world like this where a motorcycle is driving by and is trying to stop us from listening to each other, which is symbolic because there's too many noises happening a lot of times. Part of leadership work is being steadfast and making sure that we continue to work on communicating and empower our people to make the decision that's right for them, right? And of course, that means good information, not hiding behind some kind of like agenda, and not like hiding behind, I also want to say like this ego sometimes that we have, right? So just being honest and showing up authentically to lead people toward truth and justice. And that's why I do this leadership work, especially toward in the civic space.
Yes, definitely. And I think, as a multi-generational organization, as an organization that really tries to bridge different communities, right? From both our monolingual, more vulnerable elders that might not have access to a lot of these resources, right? And then also to think about the youth and the newer generation in a way that, we're taking the lead from our newer generation, right? To think about what it means to build power for the community, right? I want to pitch this question at you, Isabella. If you could talk a little bit more about, this idea of power building, right? Like, why is it so important for us to listen to each other, right? Like as Anthony was saying, and really take the lead that like you got involved when you were much younger than a lot of I would say a lot of nonprofit leaders get involved in, right? Like, talk about a little bit about that motivation.
Yeah, thanks for the question. So the thing you eventually realize, the more time that you spend sort of in like this community space, is that our community doesn't really hold a lot of power, right? The power is something that's kept from us, right, to try to keep us down. So really, like, I see the importance of like power building, or the importance of listening to each other, so that we have this united front, so that we are able to help and uplift each other. Because as it is, right, if we're just like squabbling amongst each other, arguing and debating amongst each other, we lose sight of like what really like unites us, and what really makes us stronger as a community. So yeah, that's importance of listening, in my opinion.
Right, and I think maybe this question is for both of you or either of you. What are some of the most pressing issues that you think our community should be focusing on right now? Right, like what should we be participating in?
Oh, Isabella, you want to take that one first?
There's a lot of different issues we should definitely paying attention to.
Yeah, no,
Racial
I
justice
agree.
always,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Oh, I was sorry. There might have been a lag. I think what maybe not an issue, because I'm also this big believer, is like when you focus too much on issues, you get lost in the weeds sometimes, right? And you focus only on the issue. What I'm trying to think about is solutions, and one of the things that's been showing up a lot more that might address a lot of these issues, right, is giving power back to the people, whether it's in the form of mutual aids, or just like trying to create what would help create liberation in the Vietnamese community, right? And so a lot of times our elders are very happy to be here already, because they already paid their price to be here, right? Escaping from the old world and being here. But as we, the second gen or first gen, depends how you want to see it, right? It's like as we growing up here as Vietnamese American, issues like social justice, racial issues, like taking care of each other. And I'm a big believer of this, right? It's like until all have justice, all are able to access justice, access equity equally, there is no such thing as really real justice and equity until that happens. And so part of that is reducing the system, the hold that has a hold on us. We're not even talking about like just policy and laws, but also like how the system tricks us to think that we don't have power, right? And so I realized while growing up, right, some of it is helping our Vietnamese like uncles and aunties who have like nail salon shops, who have those car repair shops, find ways to make sure they're empowered and they stay in business, right? And so there's a racial justice issue right there, right? Supporting their work and making sure they have a livelihood moving forward, so they have opportunities for themselves and for their children. And the cool thing about, and the most important thing about that is making sure that we have English language access to protect them, right? And so that part is that other issue that comes up. And I think they're all connected, because when we start thinking about like how we can create a space where people can be safe, where there's justice in the face of injustice, and we give people access to equity through English language access, making sure that no one's forgotten, make sure that we're part of the decision making. I think that would be like a big blanket umbrella statement that will cover those issues, because like Isabella was saying, there's so many. But one thing that we don't talk about enough, climate change. That's going to mess us up in the future, and we haven't had a chance to talk about it because there's too many other issues.
Right, and I think like being able to focus, thinking about how we focus on the solutions and how we get there, right, is a lot of what I think we're looking to do now as an organization. We have a lot of programs and projects that are grant funded, right? Like you mentioned, working with our elders, our aunts, uncles that work at the nail salon or work at the pho restaurants or whatever, right? Like we want to be able to equip them with the tools that they need to be able to lead healthy, happy, and successful lives, right? And a lot of the impact that we've seen from the COVID-19 pandemic and how it, kind of, shaped their lives, at least in these past 2 years, is really important to how we understand our work, right? I'll pass it to you, Isabella, if you want to add anything on that, right? That sort of intergenerational dimension, right? That those relationships that we're building, the ways that we connect to one another.
Yeah, what Anthony pointed out was really important, how a lot of like our like family members and our relatives, how like these channels and these means for like getting involved in community issues is like made really inaccessible to them because of these different language barriers, because of these other challenges. So I think ultimately like what connects me to like all these different issues is like finding ways to bridge that intergenerational gap. I see my role as like a community organizer, person working in the community as not just like advocating for the community, because to me, advocacy is like, how do I amplify the community's voice, right? But what we actually want to aspire towards is how do we make it so that these conditions and these circumstances make it possible for the community to be able to use their own voice, right? How do we bring them to the table, right?
Yes, no, and for sure, I think, and one of the things I'm thinking about now, right? Like if we're on VAR and Air tonight talking about systemic and structural change, right, in English, like how are we going to be able to make that in this type of information accessible to a lot of our Vietnamese speaking elders, right? Like what is that translation process going to look like? How are we going to be able to put it onto the radio so that they can listen to us, right? But then also hear what we're saying and work with us towards those, towards working to that, towards collaboration and towards finding these sorts of solutions, right? And I think I would say, like, I would add, it's really important for us to, you know, we're oftentimes reminded about the sacrifices that our parents, our aunts, uncles, our elders make, right? And I think that in the same vein that we learn about learn from the sacrifices that they made for us to be here and that history, right? That we're also thinking about the ways in which we are compassionate, the ways that they taught us to be compassionate and empathetic to one another, right? To other human beings. And I feel like, you know, if the heart of our civic participatory work begins with that, then maybe we can build some more intergenerational bridges, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. It's actually funny because I think the phrase that showed up in my head is "close the gap," not the store. Even though I'm not a fan of the Gap anymore, I used to work there years ago. Yeah, I couldn't resist. You're all gonna get my personality in this one. Closing the gap, it would be like just having commitments, small commitments. One of the things I love about VAR and one of the things why I commit to VAR was that we were the one of few groups that made sure there was English language access when everything was shutting down last year because of the pandemic. Right? I hear a lot of people who talk about like, oh, we're being affected, we're getting our butts whooped, right? We're losing our livelihood, right? And I'm like, no, we're actually going out there to make sure there's information, to make sure there's translation. Some of my personal work, and I can't believe I'm saying this on air, part of my commitment is that to build a strong enough Vietnamese like vocabulary so that I can actually support in hosting VAR and air, so that we have English, so that we have support to close that gap, and so that we can actually bridge the old world and the new world, and so that we can mobilize the old world and the new world together, not separately.
Right. And I just want to really quickly highlight VAR's website, viaroundtable.org, that everyone watching here today live with us or that are watching us later can look to get involved, to get a lot of the resources that we're talking about. And to also, if you click this, it'll take you to a volunteer with the Vietnamese American Roundtable page, right? And if you sign up here, we'll look to get back to you within the coming weeks, so that you can take part in some of the programs and projects that we're working on to really do what we say we're going to do, right? On VAR and Air, especially when it comes to bringing our community with us and working together in community towards things like racial justice, social justice, and building power, right? And I want to pass it back to both Anthony and Isabella, because I know that you're both involved in the Vietnamese American community, just like the, you know, BIPOC communities in a lot of different ways. Do you have any plugs or any suggestions if folks wanted to take that small step and get involved, right? Where should they look towards?
I can take that question first. So yeah, I'm definitely speaking a lot from my own personal lived experience, and sorry if you hear airplane noise over me. But yeah, the first place I got started was in high school VSA, and I think for a lot of people, like this might seem like an unexpected answer because civic participation VSA, but my VSA tends to be more of a social space. So how do I bridge the two? So my answer for that is like, you might not get started in like that kind of a space right away where it's like more politically oriented. It's really just to get to know the community, explore the culture. And through then, I feel like once I really internalized, you know, my roots, my background, and like what that all means to me and the history, it encouraged me to like think more deeply about like the different like economic, political, all these other structures that happen to affect the community. So short answer of that is It might not be something that you like dive into right away. It's something that like, you know, you plant the seed, right? You get to know VSA, you get to know your people, you get to immerse yourself with Vietnamese music, food, the language, and then slowly through then, right, these things start to like, you know, become part of you, and it encourages you to branch out further.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Isabella. And before I pass it to you, Anthony, I think on that same note, you know, in the way that culture has been something that brings us together, right? That has physically brought us together with the elder generation, that has provided a lot of space for collaboration. Some quick VAR updates is that we're going to be actually tabling at a couple of Tet Chung Tu festivals, right? Because this upcoming Tuesday is the beginning of Tet Chung Tu, or the Mid-Autumn Moon Festival. The first one that we're going to be involved in and providing resources for, from in terms of, you know, laborers and workers' rights to voters' rights, to COVID-19 information, right, is going to be at Yerba Buena High School. We're going to be there from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. tabling this upcoming Saturday. So if you're here watching us, come join us, take a picture, make sure your mask is on, and say hi. And the other cultural event that we're going to be participating in in partnership with ICANN, the Vietnamese American Community Center, and a couple of other local Vietnamese American orgs, is Tet Chung Tu at VAC, right? And it's going to be the following week on the 25th of September from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the VAC. And there's a way to pre-register and get involved in that sort of way. And we're going to be handing out free lanterns and have a photo booth for children and families. So make sure that you come out, because like Isabella said, right, like sometimes it starts with the culture, right? Like that's how we build some common ground with each other. Anthony, how to get involved from your perspective?
Okay, I lost my cursor for a second. How to get involved? Okay, so there are a couple of things. One is like I started off my journey into just having, I kept on saying this, Asian pride, like AZN pride with the Y, right? Because there was like not a lot of representation, right? And so sometimes having close cultures, kid walking by, having like close culture, like I want to say brotherly, sisterly culture, helps out a lot too. And then there's other ways you can also get involved in terms of, like, if you're more like focused on Vietnamese community. I've been into a really big thing called mutual aids. And so if you want to get involved, one way to get involved is not like just donating money, donating time and skills. There's so many people who need translation, so many people who need access to like law guidance, and you don't have to be a lawyer, right? But you may know the process to help guide people through the process. And that's like the misconception a lot of times that people have. A lot of us have gone through enough of these process to know what we can do. All it then has become is like volunteer a little bit of time. And so that's some ways to get involved in the community. And you'd be surprised, because in that work of connecting, the work that I've done with connecting, I've learned so much more about my culture and my people in a way that I've never been so much more proud of being Vietnamese American.
Yes, thank you for that, Anthony. And I think, you know, pride is a lot of it, a lot about it, right? And to be able to feel this sense of pride and this sense of connection with something bigger than yourself, right, is really at the core of how we are going to, you know, engage people and convince people to be civically participatory, or just engage in the community, right? And to kind of, you know, to have another plug for VAR, you know, in addition to being able to volunteer with VAR and on our projects, we have a lot of COVID-19 direct outreach projects coming up. We have a symposium or a mini conference on power building, Vietnamese American empowerment, and racial justice coming up in October that y'all are going to hear about soon, right? One of the opportunities that I want to share with you all before it actually goes officially live on our LinkedIn and our Indeed and our Facebook is that we'll actually have a couple of job opportunities open for folks who might want to be engaged through VAR, with VAR, to work on a lot of the projects that we're working on, right? And let me just share the job description with y'all here on Facebook Live. But these are going to be released very, very soon, by this week, right? We have one full-time position that's opening up, and then we have one part-time position that's going to be opening up, right? So make sure that you follow us on our social media, and that you keep up to date with everything that VAR is putting out, and including our resources, right, to be the first ones to hear about when this opportunity is going to be coming up. And with that, I mean, I know that, you know, there's a conference, I think, Isabella, that you're involved in, right? So if you wanted to plug that really quickly while we're talking about ways to get involved in the community.
For sure. Definitely just putting this out there as a resource for anyone who is a caregiver of a loved one, whether it's formally or informally. This Thursday and Saturday, we have the 4th Annual Vietnamese Caregivers Conference. It's a 2-day event with speakers such as Andy Lay, Nguyen, Executive Director of ICANN, as well will be hosted in Vietnamese, presented in Vietnamese. And it's going to go over different resources that are made available to caregivers, right? In terms of like mental health support, Medi-Cal, ways in which we can, you know, better equip ourselves to like deal with, you know, the oftentimes very challenging task of taking care of our loved ones, right? So this is meant to be here as a resource. And for registration info, unfortunately, I don't have a nice quick graphic I can pull up, but for registration info, definitely feel free to hop onto ICANN's Facebook account, Facebook page, which is where we have the registration link.
Great, thanks so much for that, Isabella. And everything that we're talking about today will be available on our Facebook and Instagram pages. All right, so we talked about a lot, right? We talked about some of the issues that we're facing, some of the solutions that we're working towards, the programs and projects that VAR has going on and how to get involved, generally how to get involved in the Vietnamese American community. For tonight, you know, before we wrap on up, is there anything, last words that you all would want to share with our audience?
I say, we were talking about like having an outro music. Can you all hear music in the background now? Other than that, like part of the audience is like, I think we mentioned this in our meetings. We want to grow VAR and Air, and so talk to us. If you want to be the online personality to help like transform people's lives, come to us. We can use your help. That's like the only book I have, plus the music in the background.
Yes, and with that, you know, I just want to quickly say thank you so much for our guests from today, and the background music, our outro music going on, right? Anthony Lay and Isabella Leung are board members, are from our board of directors to join us here tonight on VAR and Air. Again, we hope to see you maybe in person at either of the Tet Jung Tu festivals these next 2 weekends. Hopefully you volunteer with us as we plan our symposium, as we, you know, release our job application, and you know, continue to have these VAR and Air conversations where we're providing you all with, you know, these important conversations that we're having amongst each other, but also the important resources that we hope that you share with your friends, family, and community, right? So next week, we'll have more information about COVID-19 and ways that you can get your friends, family, and community vaccinated, featuring some folks from the Northeast Medical Services, or NEMS, who's going to be our partner in a lot of this COVID-19 work. So thank you all again so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you next time on VAR and Air. Cue the music, Anthony.
There you go.
Nice. Good night, everyone.
Bye.